In 2014, Ghost Stalkers promised to go where no paranormal show had gone before, to explore the science of portals between worlds. Starring actor Chad Lindberg and researcher John E.L. Tenney, the series was short-lived but unforgettable. Then suddenly, it vanished. No cancellation notice, no finale, just silence. Now, years later, one of the show's insiders has spoken out. What he revealed isn't about ratings or production budgets. It's about what they found. And once you hear it, you'll understand why Ghost Stalkers was never meant to continue. Make sure you're subscribed. This story gets darker than you think. When Ghost Stalkers premiered in 2014, it felt like something entirely new in the world of paranormal television. Unlike shows that chased shadows for jump scares, this one dared to ask why hauntings happened, and whether they might be connected to something bigger. The series followed actor and investigator Chad Lindberg, best known for Supernatural, and John E.L. Tenney, a seasoned researcher who'd spent decades exploring the idea that hauntings weren't just ghostly echoes, but ruptures, thin spots in the boundary between dimensions. Together, they became unlikely partners. Chad, emotional and impulsive. Tenney, analytical and philosophical. Their chemistry made the show compelling, but behind the scenes, that mix would soon turn volatile. The network pitched Ghost Stalkers as a groundbreaking fusion of science and spirituality. The team wasn't just recording EVPs, they were studying energetic gateways, locations where trauma, death, and environmental conditions allegedly combined to open temporary doorways between planes of existence. They brought in experimental gear, laser grids, audio frequency analyzers, magnetic field disruptors, and full-spectrum recorders built by independent scientists. It was risky, untested technology, but that's what made it fascinating. Their first major case, the abandoned Springfield Hospital Center, set the tone. During filming, Tenney theorized that the building's structure might act as an antenna for consciousness, allowing entities to cross over. When Chad entered one of the hospital's sealed wards, temperatures plummeted and static filled the air. Crew members later reviewed the audio and found a deep, distorted whisper repeating a phrase that would haunt the show forever. "You shouldn't be here." The crew brushed it off as coincidence, but Tenney wasn't convinced. He started logging every malfunction, every missing second of footage, every unexplained voice. Within weeks, he noticed a pattern. The anomalies were following them, appearing in new locations miles apart, repeating similar messages. What began as an investigation into hauntings was quickly turning into something deeper, something the network hadn't prepared for. And for Chad and Tenney, that first case would mark the beginning of a journey that felt less like television and more like an invitation into something that didn't want to be filmed. As Ghost Stalkers gained traction, its investigations grew bolder and far more dangerous. By the third episode, Chad Lindberg and John E.L. Tenney had abandoned the safety of haunted houses for sites rumored to be active gateways, locations where, according to eyewitnesses, light distortions, vanishing figures, and time slips were routine. Tenney referred to them as liminal zones, thin points in reality where the physical and metaphysical touched. The network saw a hook for ratings. Tenney saw a warning. One of the most controversial experiments took place in an abandoned textile mill in Mississippi. Locals claimed that strange lights appeared inside the factory late at night, glowing spheres that seemed to pass through walls. To test the theory, Tenney set up a grid of synchronized EMF readers and motion-triggered cameras around a collapsed hallway the locals called the portal. Chad volunteered to enter the zone alone. As the cameras rolled, his voice trembled over the radio. "It's getting thick in here, like walking through static." Moments later, the team's monitors went dark. For nearly 7 minutes, Chad was completely cut off. When the equipment came back online, he was standing motionless, staring at the far wall. Later, he said time had stretched. "It felt like I'd been gone an hour," he recalled, but they said it was minutes. Tenney analyzed the footage frame by frame and noticed something impossible. Chad's reflection in a broken window was delayed, half a second behind his movements. "That shouldn't happen," Tenney said. "That's not video lag. That's physics breaking." From then on, the experiments intensified. They introduced pulse frequency recorders designed to detect fluctuations in space-time energy, technology even physicists questioned. Tenney theorized they were documenting micro-rips in reality, perhaps triggered by trauma imprinted on the environment. Chad, though intrigued, began showing signs of distress after each shoot: nosebleeds, insomnia, and vivid dreams of faces peering through smoke. Crew logs from those nights describe more than simple hauntings. One sound technician wrote, "The hum isn't just noise, it's patterned, rhythmic." Like something breathing, production staff began refusing to stay past midnight. Even the director admitted in a confidential email, "We might be crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed." The deeper Ghost Stalkers pushed into the science of portals, the stranger their evidence became. And while Discovery marketed the series as entertainment, Tenney knew the truth. They weren't chasing ghosts anymore. They were chasing something alive. After the Mississippi shoot, something changed in both men, and in the energy that surrounded Ghost Stalkers. Chad Lindberg, once fearless and playful, began arriving on set quieter, withdrawn, almost haunted himself. He told producers he wasn't sleeping. Doors in his house opened on their own, and his phone battery drained even when powered off. "It's like the static followed me home," he said. John E. L. Tenney brushed it off at first, reminding him that fear feeds phenomena. But within weeks, Tenney started experiencing his own disturbances: flickering lights, phantom knocks, and what he described as voices answering my thoughts before I speak. The crew began to notice patterns. Equipment stored hundreds of miles apart malfunctioned on the same days. Cameras in safe zones powered down mid-shoot. And the phrase, "You shouldn't be here," first heard at the Springfield hospital, surfaced again, this time whispered faintly in Chad's personal recorder while he was alone in his trailer. Even more disturbing, it used his own voice. Emails exchanged between crew members revealed growing concern. One technician wrote, "We need to shut it down. We didn't close whatever we opened." Another noted strange EMF spikes during editing sessions inside Discovery's office building. "It's like the footage itself is contaminated," one producer said. They began storing the drives in a lead-lined container, hoping it would reduce interference. It didn't. Then came the Tennessee investigation, a site Tenney called the Threshold. Locals claimed that people who visited the area reported seeing themselves from a distance, as if a second version of them was moving out of sync. During filming, Chad entered the location first, followed by a cameraman and Tenney. Within minutes, Chad froze mid-sentence, eyes unfocused, murmuring, "It's behind me, but it's me." The camera glitched, recording overlapping frames of Chad's face, one looking forward, one turned to the side. After that, Chad refused to return to the site. He told Tenney, "I don't think it's ghosts anymore, man. I think it's us." Within a week, 2 crew members quit, citing persistent nightmares. Discovery quietly brought in a psychologist to monitor the team, but even she left after one visit, saying the set's atmosphere was oppressively sentient. What none of them realized then was that they weren't the only ones being watched. Whatever they'd awakened had attached itself not to a building or an object, but to the people who dared to document it. And that was when Ghost Stalkers stopped being a show about ghosts and became a show haunted by its own creation. The night that sealed Ghost Stalkers' fate came during the filming of what was supposed to be a season highlight: the investigation at St. Vincent's Seminary, an abandoned religious complex outside Pennsylvania, rumored to contain one of the strongest portal energies in the country. It was a sprawling labyrinth of corridors, stairwells, and crumbling chapels, the kind of location every paranormal team dreams of. But from the moment the crew arrived, nothing felt right. Even Tenney, usually calm and skeptical, remarked in his notes, "This place feels aware of us." The investigation began just before midnight. The plan was simple: isolate the investigators, monitor energy fluctuations, and conduct synchronized EVP sessions at multiple points in the building. But within the first hour, everything began to unravel. Radios crackled with overlapping voices, some belonging to crew members who weren't transmitting. The static formed words, "Turn back." Then, as Chad entered a long hallway lined with shattered glass, every camera feed flickered to black simultaneously. The generator, fully fueled, cut out. For 7 minutes, no one could see or hear what was happening inside. When the lights returned, Chad stood at the far end of the hall, staring at a doorway no one else could see. "It's open," in," he said softly, then collapsed. He later described the moment as if the air inverted, pulling him forward like gravity had flipped direction. Tenny rushed in, only to find the walls vibrating, not physically, but visually, like heat rising off asphalt. The crew's thermal camera briefly captured a humanoid outline standing directly behind Chad, taller than any person present, motionless, emitting no detectable heat. Seconds later, the file corrupted. Even more disturbing was what they found on Chad's personal audio recorder. When played back, it contained a deep pulsing hum, rhythmic and structured, almost mechanical. Beneath it, a faint voice whispered, "Stay with us." The team wrapped filming immediately, shaken. One sound technician refused to return for pickup shots, saying, "Something's mimicking us." That night, back at the hotel, 2 crew members reported identical nightmares: a dark corridor, a flickering light, and a shadow with their own faces. Tenny called Discovery the next morning and demanded a halt to production until they could review the evidence. What they captured at St. Vincent's was unlike anything the show had documented before. The phenomenon wasn't just haunting the location, it was responding. And when Discovery executives saw that footage for the first time, they knew something had gone far beyond television. It was the beginning of the end for Ghost Stalkers. When the footage from St. Vincent's Seminary reached Discovery headquarters, the reaction wasn't excitement, it was alarm. Executives had seen hundreds of hours of paranormal footage before, but this was different. It wasn't just jump scares or flickering shadows. This was structured, intelligent, and unexplainable. The raw files refused to play properly, as if corrupted by something more than data errors. On one drive, timecodes jumped backward. On another, audio loops repeated fragments of speech that didn't exist in the original recording. A deep, guttural phrase that analysts swore sounded like, "We're not done." Within 48 hours, the entire investigation was flagged for technical review. Discovery's internal security department took control of the media storage vaults, locking away every tape, card, and backup drive. Staff were told to keep silent, even among co-workers. One producer leaked an email describing the network's concern over potentially harmful subliminal data. Another noted that electromagnetic readings from the seminary had spiked so severely that crew members' body cams stopped recording at random intervals, as if time itself had hiccuped. Behind closed doors, editors tried salvaging the episode, but it fought them at every turn. Files re-rendered themselves with static. Some exports produced black screens with faint figures flashing for a single frame before vanishing. At one point, a colorist working on the footage fainted mid-session after claiming she saw someone standing behind Chad who wasn't there. When she woke, she refused to finish the project. Discovery executives brought in external consultants, physicists, digital forensics experts, even a few government technicians under non-disclosure agreements. One of them, a data analyst, later told a friend, "It wasn't data corruption, it was information interference. Something intelligent was embedded in the signal." The report he filed disappeared within days. By the end of the week, Discovery's legal department classified the entire case as restricted media, citing potential reputational and psychological risk. Every crew member was issued a new non-disclosure contract, longer, stricter, and backed by threats of litigation. To the public, the network blamed budget issues and low viewership, but inside the company, executives whispered about the episode that watches back. Tenny and Lindbergh were furious. They argued that the footage should air, that the world had a right to see proof. Discovery refused. The hard drives were sealed in a locked vault, and Ghost Stalkers was quietly suspended pending evaluation. That evaluation never happened. The files were never reviewed again. And for everyone who'd worked on the show, the message was clear. Whatever Ghost Stalkers had captured at St. Vincent's, it was not meant to be seen. After Discovery locked away the St. Vincent's footage, the network's silence spoke louder than any official statement. Weeks turned into months, and the production team received no updates, only a short internal memo that read, "Do not engage in public comment regarding the final episode or related field incidents for John E. L. Tenny." That was the breaking point. A lifelong investigator who'd spent decades studying the unknown, he refused to let corporate fear bury what he believed might be historic evidence. But even he seemed changed. Crew members described him as withdrawn and sleepless, carrying notebooks, tablets filled with sketches of circles and doorways drawn over and over again. He started appearing on podcasts, cautiously hinting at what had happened without violating his NDA. "Sometimes," he said in one interview, "we ask questions that the universe doesn't want answered." He never mentioned St. Vincent's by name, but fans noticed how his tone shifted, less scientific, more haunted. He spoke of energies that react like intelligence and doorways that remember who opens them. Listeners thought it was poetic. Those who'd worked beside him knew it was literal. Chad Lindberg, too, began showing signs of emotional strain. Normally open and passionate, he avoided interviews altogether. When he did speak publicly, his comments were cryptic. "We filmed something we didn't understand," he told a fan during a convention panel. "You think you're hunting ghosts, but what if they're not dead? What if they're waiting?" He laughed afterward, but his eyes didn't. Discovery's legal department reached out to both men shortly after those remarks, reminding them of continuing confidentiality obligations. Not long after, Tenney posted a brief tweet. "Some doors don't close, they wait." It vanished hours later, but the message spread like wildfire among paranormal communities. Off-camera, both men struggled to return to normal life. Tenney admitted privately that his home's electronics malfunctioned constantly. "Every night at 3:11, the power flickers," he told a colleague. Every night. Chad reported waking to see faint shadows reflected in his bedroom mirror, the same shapes caught on the St. Vincent's footage. Crew members were no better off. One camera operator was hospitalized for severe insomnia. A producer quit the industry altogether, calling it occupational haunting. Even Discovery staff who handled the raw files claimed their office lights dimmed when the drives were accessed. Whatever Ghost Stalkers had encountered, it wasn't content staying on tape. It was spreading through devices, through memory, through the people who had dared to document it. And when Discovery finally realized how deeply it had reached, the network made one decision that would change everything. They erased it. Rumors of a Ghost Stalkers lost episode began surfacing months after the show disappeared. Crew insiders claimed one final investigation was filmed at an undisclosed prison in Kentucky, a site Tenney believed was an active interdimensional hotspot. What they captured was never broadcast. According to one lighting tech, the footage showed Chad's reflection moving seconds before he did, like time was folding in on itself. Editors who reviewed the material described it as impossible to sync. Discovery ordered all copies destroyed after a consultant reviewing the tape suffered a breakdown, claiming the figure on screen was learning. The network buried the episode, labeling it classified production media. Fans never saw it, but insiders still whisper that one drive survived, hidden, locked away, and waiting for someone to open it again. After Ghost Stalkers vanished from TV, Discovery quietly scrubbed all mentions of it from their site. Fans begged for answers, but neither Chad Lindberg nor John E.L. Tenney would speak. Both seemed drained, hollow, and done with chasing the unknown. Chad admitted in one brief live stream, "Some things you film once, and that's enough." Tenney shifted focus to lectures about metaphysics, often referencing doorways that push back. Crew members described strange side effects long after production ended: dead electronics, phantom knocks, and vivid dreams of the St. Vincent's hallway. One editor claimed his hard drive physically warped after trying to recover old footage. Discovery denied everything, calling it creative redirection, but insiders knew better. The show hadn't been canceled, it had been contained. And even now, those who worked on Ghost Stalkers say that when they talk about it too long, the static starts again. Years later, fragments of the truth finally surfaced. During a private conference, John E.L. Tenney broke his silence, confirming what fans had always suspected. Ghost Stalkers didn't end because of ratings. It ended because of what they found. He said Discovery's consultants warned that airing the footage could cause psychological harm to viewers, calling it evidence of conscious phenomena. Tenney's exact words were chilling. "We didn't record ghosts. We recorded a reaction." Chad Lindberg later echoed him, saying, "Some doors stay open, even when you walk away." Neither man has spoken publicly about the series since. To this day, the vault containing the St. Vincent's footage remains sealed under network control. Those who've seen even seconds of it describe the same detail: a dark figure standing behind Chad, watching but never moving. Whether it was energy, entity, or something beyond understanding, no one can say. But one truth remains. Ghost Stalkers didn't just capture the paranormal, it may have crossed into it. And that's why the cameras never rolled again.